Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and those who don't identify as either, we are back. I told you we were doing a part 2 to the previous episode. If you missed it, I just put up another recap for the Diddy trial. So days, I think 12 through 15. So that was part 1, and this is part 2. We have a lot of material to cover. I thought this was going to be a part 1 and a part 2. We might mess around and end up with 3 parts because I have a lot to say and there's a lot to cover. I missed a lot of days of recapping for the pod. I do the recaps daily on my social media, but some people are just like, I want to hear it. And I want to hear the commentary because I know you got thoughts. I do. And all of them aren't PC. I talk later in the episode because it's already recorded. I talk later in the episode about how I'm currently getting not fully dragged. Half the audience is dragging me and the other half is like, I don't see what she said wrong. Story of my life. That's not the point. None of this is the point. The point is Diddy trial, day 16. Let's get to it. The day 16 recap is sourced from CNN, Washington Post, NBC News. It says Frank Piazza, a forensic audio and video editor. He's on the witness stand. It says Frank is being paid $295 USD American dollars an hour to work this case. He typically works with the defense attorneys, not prosecutors. He has reviewed cell phone video, surveillance footage, and sex videos in this case. One important thing that Frank says, he says the footage from the 2016 attack at the Intercontinental Hotel, the one people were like, it's altered. Frank said no one. Frank also said he recovered 10 sex videos from a laptop that Cassie turned over to the feds. He said the videos are from 2012 and 2014, and he said they were recovered from the Frank Black user profile. Frank, not Frank Black, Frank the video editor, he said he did have to enhance the video and the audio files. They were 2012, 2014. I think they'd been erased, and so he recovered them. So they did need some enhancement in order for them to be seen properly. Next is Briana Bongalan, Bongolan. I haven't seen it pronounced anywhere. Super sorry. I try not to butcher people's names when I can. I know I do it all the time, but it's never intentional. Briana is a creative marketing director and a close friend of Cassie. They hung around a bunch while Cassie was dating Diddy, and she is now on the witness stand. She has been granted immunity. Whenever people are granted immunity, that's like my tell that their testimony is about to be a wild ride. Briana and Cassie met in 2014-15 while they were designing clothes for a streetwear company, I think in LA. Briana knew Cassie was dating Diddy, and she said she only agreed to meet him for dinner at his house because Cassie, quote unquote, begged her. Briana said she had seen Cassie with a black eye, and she'd seen her upset on the phone with Diddy, so she wasn't really that eager to meet him. It says in 2016, Cassie and Briana went shopping, and near the end of the day, Diddy sent Cassie a list of all the places they had been. Cassie had not told him where they were shopping. In 2016, Briana was on FaceTime with Cassie as Cassie was prepping for the premiere of The Perfect Match. She said she saw Cassie's black eye. She said she also saw bruises on Cassie other times. I think like 3 or 4 different people have testified about Cassie's black eye at this premiere. She said on Cassie's 29th birthday, Briana saw Cassie and Diddy arguing, and Cassie seemed upset. Cassie had testified on her 29th birthday that Diddy was pestering her about a hotel night, and she didn't want to do it. She wanted to do karaoke with her friends, which is like so wholesome. Briana says that she, Deontay, and Cassie went back to Cassie's apartment, and Cassie packed a bag and left. Briana said she didn't know where Cassie went. Cassie said she went to do a freak off. Deontay also testified about this night as well. I mean, Briana just mentioned him, but he said about the same, that Cassie was upset. Cassie didn't want to go. She and Diddy were going back and forth, and Diddy and his security forced Cassie to leave. Briana said she often stayed at Cassie's apartment, and she said Diddy would show up late at night banging on the door. She said once Diddy showed up at Cassie's and threw a knife at Cassie. Briana says the knife missed, and Cassie threw it back, and then Diddy left. Briana doesn't recall if she and Cassie used drugs that night. She did not call the police. She said, I was scared of Puff. Briana says Diddy gave her drugs 3 to 4 times. She said she's seen him use marijuana, ketamine, and coke. She said she and Cassie would do drugs weekly, and sometimes they would try to sober up to, quote, do better. 2016. During a photo shoot on the beach, Diddy told Briana, quote, I'm the devil and I could kill you. She says she doesn't know why Diddy said that. And she says she doesn't know if he was high, but she was on coke. She said, I was terrified, but because of the cocaine, I had a little confidence and I just brushed it off. Feds asked why did Briana continue to see Diddy after that. She said, quote, honestly, I don't know. 2016. Briana says Diddy held her over a 17-story balcony, then threw her onto the balcony furniture. The violence caused a bruise with a piercing on the back of her leg, and she had back and neck pain. The jury was shown pictures of her injuries. After, she said she had night terrors and paranoia and screamed in her sleep. Briana says this incident happened. She said she and her girlfriend were asleep on the couch at Cassie's place. Diddy showed up banging on the door, as he was known to do. Briana said she asked her girlfriend to hide in the guest bathroom. She said, quote, I didn't want to expose her to the things I see. Briana says she went to the balcony to, quote, appear casual and to smoke. Briana testified Diddy came up behind her, quote, lifted me up and then had me on top of the rail. She said Diddy grabbed her chest and then held her by the armpits over the railing. She said her feet were dangling above the railing. He repeatedly yelled, do you know what the fuck you did? Briana said she had no clue and told him as much. Diddy dangled Briana for 15 seconds, Briana testified, and then she said he threw her into the balcony furniture. She said she heard Cassie ask him, quote, did you hang her over the balcony? Briana heard Cassie and Diddy talking about Briana's girlfriend being in the house, and then Diddy left. Briana left too. She went back to her apartment. Briana says Diddy and his security FaceTimed Briana a few days after the incident, and she told Diddy, I don't want any problems with you. She said while Diddy was on the phone or FaceTime, she said he kept putting his hands over his head and breathing and alternating, looking at the camera and looking back. She said that she did not report the incident because she was scared. And she said the next time she saw Diddy, she, quote, tried to be cool. Briana did tell her managers about the incident and was advised to see a chiropractor. She did. She did not seek further medical treatment because the drugs in her system numbed her pain. In 2018, put a pen in this story because Diddy's defense, has asked the judge for a mistrial over this part of Briana's testimony. 2018, Cassie, Diddy, and Briana did ketamine for 8 hours on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. When Briana left, she decided she didn't want to do drugs anymore. She said she tattooed the date on her neck as a commitment to get sober. And after that day, her relationship with Cassie became, quote, sporadic. 2023, the balcony incident was included in Cassie's lawsuit. Briana told Cassie she got the date wrong and it happened at Cassie's apartment, not a hotel. 2024, Briana hired a lawyer and made a monetary demand to Diddy over the balcony incident. In 2024, music producer Rob Holloway, a close friend of Briana, FaceTimed her from what appeared to be Diddy's backyard in LA. He said he was calling on behalf of Diddy to make a settlement. Briana declined. A month or two later, Briana and her lawyer filed a lawsuit against Diddy for 10 million American USD dollars and dineros. Finally, somebody asking for some real money. I think Briana's the only person in this whole case who actually went after the correct piece of coin for what she allegedly suffered. The prosecution asked Briana, they said, are you testifying for the money? And she said, I'm testifying to, quote, seek justice for what happened to me. And she notes that she's no longer friends with Rob. So Briana goes to cross. Briana says she and Cassie spent most of their time together getting high on marijuana, coke, ketamine, GHB, Molly pills, acid, and a blunt sprinkled with coke that they called a Cocoa Puff. And she said that one was Cassie's favorite. Briana said she sold drugs to Cassie, introduced her to dealers, and they both had, quote, a serious drug problem. Briana spoke to Cassie before she filed a lawsuit, and Cassie asked to name her in the lawsuit. Briana refused. Briana tried to keep her lawsuit against Diddy a secret from friends. Also, I have noted here that the defense asked Briana many, many questions, and her response is, I don't remember, multiple times when the defense presses her for specific details. Diddy trial, day 17, part 1 of 2. Today's recap is sourced from CNN, NBC News, Washington Post. Briana is back on the witness stand. She's under cross-examination. She said that she had nightmares about Diddy dangling her over the balcony as recently as a few days ago. I also have noted here about the I don't remember and then now I don't recall. She said that multiple times under cross-examination. One of the times that she said I don't remember or I don't recall, the defense asked her about a lawsuit where Briana claimed that Diddy assaulted her. And the defense asked if the only way to file a lawsuit against Diddy is to claim sexual assault. And Briana says, quote, "I don't recall." Briana, at some point, I think it's one of the times that she recounts Diddy dangling her over the balcony. She said that Diddy had groped her breast before he dangled her. And the defense notes that she hasn't mentioned that detail in her recollection, which I think is notable to call out. Briana said that she returned to Cassie's apartment 2 weeks after the balcony incident. She also said that she shared a blunt with Diddy sometime after the balcony incident. Before, she had testified that she was trying to keep her distance from Diddy. And then here, speaking to the defense, she said, quote, she was just trying to be cool with him. She also attended one of Diddy's concerts 2 weeks after the balcony incident, and she went to a club that he'd rented out. And the defense asked, "Did you wear your neck brace?" And she said, quote, "I probably should have." The defense also has a text from Briana to Cassie offering to get Diddy some kind of hoodie or t-shirt. That's why I was like, is it a cult? Because it sounds like a cult. And then being in a cult would explain so much of this behavior. I don't think you can deny that there's a degree of mind control here, but nobody seems to be calling it a cult. And I was like, it's a cult. They acting like they in a cult. They acting like them 45, 47 lovers. The defense, this is their bombshell. This is why they filed a motion for a mistrial. The defense points out to Briana, I don't remember the exact date that she gave, but whatever date it was, say it was like, I'm just pulling a date from nowhere, like September 26th. And they said, Briana, like, are you aware that on the date that you accused Diddy of doing this to you, that he was not in LA, that he was actually in New York? Here, we have hotel receipts to prove that he's not where you said he was. He was on the other side of the country. So they asked Briana, they said, hey, you came here and you lied to the jury. Isn't that true? And Briana says, quote, "I can't agree with you." On redirect, Briana explained she doesn't remember every single detail of the balcony incident. And she says, quote, "I will never forget him holding me on that balcony." And she adds, quote, "She was terrified." The defense takes her back. They accuse Briana of suing Diddy just to get money. I have a note here. The judge chastised Diddy for making facial expressions at the jurors. The judge said he saw Diddy looking and nodding at the jury, and he tells Diddy and his defense, he says, quote, "This cannot happen again." I was like, sir, one of the charges under RICO is you witness tampering. I was like, are you trying to tamper with the jury as well? In the federal courtroom? NBC notes that several NBC producers and reporters have witnessed Diddy interact with the jury positively and negatively, depending on the testimony. And one of the court artists said that Diddy has been making facial expressions at them since the start of the trial. And the judge cautions that if Diddy continues this behavior, that he could be removed from the courtroom. So next on the stand is Enrique Santos. He's an investigative analyst for the U.S. Attorney's Office. He's also an expert at pulling data from cell phones, tablets, and devices with GPS technology. He said he was able to extract a deleted message from a phone belonging to KK. That's Diddy's chief of staff. They gotta put this girl on the stands. They said her phone was seized by the feds in March 2024. Is that when Diddy's house got raided? Cassie texted KK maybe like 3 or 4 days after the date that Briana says that Diddy dangled her over the balcony. Cassie texted KK and she says Diddy had shown up at Cassie's house at 3 a.m. and he, quote, "went at Briana, choked her, and dangled her feet off the balcony. This is crazy." So there's a timestamp at the time. Like, the defense is trying to say, like, you made this shit up and now you're suing Diddy. But there's a text to Diddy's chief of staff 3 or 4 days after the incident verifying exactly what Briana says. Notably, Enrique pulled data from 3 phones that belonged to Cassie. He said he was also able to recover 2/3 of the messages on Jane's phone. Okay, so before we get to Jane, because her testimony is a doozy. Jane's testimony requires its own trigger alert. Like, it's bad. It's really bad. That's not the point. Diddy's defense has filed a motion for a mistrial over Briana's testimony because they have hotel records that says Diddy wasn't even in the city on the date that Briana is accusing him of assaulting her and dangling her over this hotel balcony. They're saying that the prosecution, the feds, knowingly put a witness on the stand that they knew were lying it should be a mistrial because of that. The judge is supposed to rule about that sometime today. As I'm recording, it's still Tuesday morning. I don't know if that has happened yet. I'm pretty sure it hasn't. Somebody would text me, DM me. My phone would go crazy if a mistrial was declared in this case. I have to finish reporting this episode and then I have to go through and edit. But before I upload the final version of this episode, I will double check to see what the judge has said about the mistrial. Day 17, part 1 of 2. And now we're on to Jane. Jane is also known as Victim 2. She says she was in a relationship with Diddy from 2021 to 2024. The internet, more or less, has figured out who Jane is. Jane is tough. Jane was on the stand for 3 days, 17, 18, 19. Today, the day that I'm recording, is day 20. Jane is still on the stand. I'll try to keep as many of my opinions to myself. Well, we'll see. I don't think you listen to this podcast to listen to me be PC. So let's get into it. You see me like procrastinating. It's just, this is hard testimony. Like the last couple days covering this trial, a lot of this stuff doesn't bother me. I can detach. Jane's stuff it's just dark. It bothers me. 2020. Jane, she's a single mother. She met Diddy while on a girls' trip to Miami. She said Diddy was dating one of her friends, and she was on the trip with the friend as a group of girls, and Diddy had paid for everyone to come down. And he invited them all to his home and then asked them to hang on his yacht. And then after the yacht, they went back to Diddy's house to hang at the pool. And Jane says one of the girls asked Diddy for drugs. Jane says she walked to Diddy to the studio building to pick up drugs from another man. She asked if the drugs were safe, and Diddy and the man confirmed, quote, "This is the best." And she said Diddy took the pink powder back to the pool and gave it to the girls, which is Rico! Jane says later that night, she said the group left the house abruptly because the friend who was dating Diddy suspected something was up with Diddy and Jane. So Jane and Diddy had pet names for each other. His name was Bert and her name was Ernie. Yes, like Sesame Street. These two grown-ass people. Diddy is in his 50s at this point. Jane, if she is who everybody thinks she is, was in her mid-30s. Jane says that after they left Miami, her and the girls, that she and Diddy stayed in touch and he invited her back to Miami. And she said she was hesitant to go at first, but she said the friend who was dating Diddy got engaged, and then Jane decided it was okay to entertain Diddy. She went back to Miami in November 2020, and then she went back again in January 2021. She said she was actually going back then for an event, and Diddy offered to book her a hotel. Jane says that she and Diddy had a 5-day first date, and she fell, quote, head over heels for him. She described Diddy as charming and with a big personality. She said she was also upfront with Diddy that her child's father was somebody Diddy didn't get along with, and that she had dated a close friend of Diddy's several years prior. And Diddy told her he didn't care. February 2021. Diddy and Jane took their first trip together to Turks and Caicos to celebrate her birthday. KK, a chef, a photographer, a butler, and a barber were there too. They stayed for 15 days. Diddy gave Jane a bracelet that read, "Love." Jane said she and Diddy did E more or less 10 times on the trip, and she testified that she used drugs maybe twice prior to this vacation. She said she was in the pool with Diddy, and he turned to her. He said, "Here, take this pill." And she did, which is Rico! Jane said she and Diddy were walking along the beach when the pill kicked in. She said she fell to the sand and started convulsing and screaming. She said the butler and KK tried to help her, and Diddy took her back to shower to calm her down. Jane said she continued to do ecstasy after that, but Diddy gave her smaller doses. She said it made her feel, quote, relaxed, euphoric, sexual, and lasted about 12 hours. She said when the 12 hours were up, she would take something else to relax, or she would go to bed. She said after the trip, Diddy wired her $10,000 because she had been away from work. Jane says her job is as an influencer. And she said she and Diddy began using the L word, as in love. Diddy told Jane he liked her, but he was seeing multiple women. Jane was monogamous. Jane said she continued to see Diddy up until literally the day he was arrested. Jane said she lived on the East Coast when they met, but she relocated to LA in June 2021. These are the kind of details that I was like, they telling too much. Like, I understand, like, they have to, get these dates in order for the jury because they're going to talk about stuff that's coming up. But I was like, all this stuff being made public, like, I literally just Googled it and I was like, oh, did she ever live here? Oh, did she ever live there? And like, oh, it appears that she lived there in summer 2021. Really? Let this be a testament to people. Don't put all your shit on the internet. She said Diddy would give her money sometimes, quote, just because, including $6,000 for her moving truck. From February to May 2021, Jane said she did drugs, coke, ketamine, every time she saw Diddy. She said she enjoyed their sex life, which included 12 to 14-hour-long sessions and lots of baby oil. She said their sexual relationship was consensual. Jane said Diddy liked to watch porn while they had sex. He also liked for Jane to dress a certain way, provocative lingerie, high stripper shoes, red lights in the bedroom, baby oil. Again, Jane enjoyed their sex life. Also, all of these descriptions, the lingerie, high stripper shoes, red lights in the bedroom, all of this stuff was found in Diddy's closet when the feds raided it. May 2021, Jane said she and Diddy had been up all night having sex and doing drugs at Diddy's house. He asked Jane if she ever fantasized about sex with other men, and is that something that she would want to do? And Jane was like, yeah, sure, okay. She thought Diddy was just, asking like theoretically. And Diddy said that he could make the fantasy real that night. Jane said she was taken aback because she just thought, they were talking shit and fantasizing. NBC notes that the witness, Jane, teared up when describing Diddy asking her to have sex with another man, quote unquote, tonight. Jane said once she said okay, that Diddy quickly got on his phone to make plans. She said she agreed to do it because, quote, my partner was excited and it was already happening. She'd been dating this man for 3 months. I mean, he'd been on the phone, like, talking to her, but, like, actually them dating, it's been, like, 3 months. Jane says she arrived at a hotel a few hours later and there were assistants there setting up. Jane says, quote, there was a bustle of getting this room ready. She said when the staff left, Diddy told Jane to relax while they waited for a man. Diddy said he knew the guy and he was nice. Jane said she was nervous and still high from the drugs she took earlier in the day. The man, his name was Don, he was from an escort service, Cowboys for Angels. I think Cassie was the one who found him, no? At least Cowboys for Angels. Cassie did testify about that. They had a show, I want to say on Showtime. Jane had sex with Don while Diddy watched. And after Dawn left, she had sex with Diddy. She said that she and Diddy were both happy. And the next day, they went on a yacht with Diddy's friends. Jane says after that first hotel night, she felt excited, quote, happy. It was taboo. She thought it was a one-off or something that would be sporadic at best. Instead, she testified that she opened a, quote, Pandora's box in their relationship. It was a door I wanted to shut. Diddy trial, day 17, part 2 of 2. This recap is sourced from at CNN, NBC News, and The Washington Post. Jane says 90% of her relationship with Diddy was having sex with other men, but she only wanted to have sex with him. She testified she repeatedly told Diddy that she didn't want to have sex with the other men, but would eventually give in. Rico! Jane says, quote, I wanted him to be happy, turn him on, and satisfy my partner. I feared losing him. I just wanted to be everything he wanted. When Jane told Diddy that she didn't want to have sex with other men, she said Diddy was dismissive. He called her crazy. He would say they didn't have to do it anymore, but they would still do it. Diddy was paying Jane's bills and rent. He would tell her if it was cool if she wanted to break up, but he would no longer pay. Jane says she didn't want to break up. She just wanted to stop having hotel nights. Jane says she felt obligated to perform because, quote, my partner was paying my rent. The hotel nights were unpredictable. Diddy would notify her he wanted one the day of or the night before. Jane would always arrange proper childcare. She has a child, just one, and keep her nails always light color and hair done straight. She also had to be tan and dressed how Diddy liked. Jane said this was time-consuming, and she avoided travel or work so she could be on standby if Diddy called. Diddy called their encounters, quote-unquote, debauchery or, quote, hotel nights. Jane said they had a hotel night every time she saw him from May 2021 until October 2023. They were on break from November 2023 to February 2024. Jane says she and Diddy would spend time together after the guests left, but it all felt like a continuation of the hotel night to Jane. She said that she was, quote, consumed by Diddy and always available at a moment's notice. She said Diddy would give her money, $5,000 to $10,000 in cash. The most he ever gave her was $20,000. He wired it to her to furnish her home. Keep that detail in mind. It comes up later. Jane says she once suggested she start an OnlyFans where she would post lingerie, bikini, and nude shots. A friend did it, and that friend was making $4 million American USD per year. Diddy told Jane to wait. Sound familiar? This came up with Cassie, too. Cassie would try to do other things that would make money outside of Diddy, or she would want to, make music and be like, can you release it? So, make some money. And he'd be like, no, just wait. Jane said she and Diddy were on break for a while, and when they got back together, she asked him for, I have it written here, $10,000 a month. In fact, she asked him for $15,000, and he told her no, that he would do 10 instead. Jane said she wanted balance in the relationship and a nice home. Diddy said, actually, he would just go ahead and pay her rent instead of paying her directly. Jane asked this man for $10,000 a month, which is cheap for all the sexual labor that he has her doing. But she's put herself in a position where she's giving Diddy complete control over literally where she lays her head. Instead of just saying, like, no, just give me the 10 in cash, just wire me the money. Diddy's like, okay, no. Like, I'll just pay for your house, which sounds on the surface okay, but literally all he did was pay for her house. She didn't have money to do other shit. She's dating a man, and I had to go look this up because she's talking about she was dating him in like 2023 or some point. Diddy's net worth in 2023, according to Forbes, was 400 million American USD dollars and dineros. And all you asked him for was $15,000 a month. You let a man who is worth 400 million American USD dollars and dineros, you let that man talk you down by $60,000 a year. That is nothing money to him. Nothing. Sometimes Diddy and Jane would have these marathon sex sessions. So she would do multiple rounds of sex with 3 different men per night. And Diddy and Jane were paying these men somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000 per romp. For one hotel night, what Diddy was paying the 3 different men, they all had sex with Jane in one night, was somewhere between, at minimum, $9,000 up to, give or take, $12,000. Jane is the one that was expected to do the work all night because men, once they come, they tap out for a minute. They got to recover. Jane can keep going. Jane would be fucking 3 different men, multiple rounds of sex, and then also have sex with Diddy. She was going and going and going and going. Her pussy was a Duracell battery or an Energizer bunny. One session of that, you were paying these men who were working on and off more than you were paying Jane for an entire month of that work. And she was doing it weekly or every other week. She's getting UTIs. She's getting yeast infections. She's in pain. They're not using condoms, so she's exposing herself to all sorts of risks. She's doing all this for rent, for $10,000 in rent. He's not even like shopping sprees or big jewelry or like just all the perks that you would expect for someone to be getting out of dating someone who has hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, he takes you on trips, but he expects you to fuck other people the whole trip. He flies you on a private jet to get you to where he needs you to be so you can fuck other people the whole time you're there. I was like, where's the glitz and the glamour? Well, they keep asking Jane. They said, well, why did you do this? It's some variation of, I wanted to please my partner and, he was paying my rent. I recognize that there is an element, clearly, of psychological control here. Because there ain't no other way this shit makes sense. And we ain't even gotten to like the really nitty gritty details yet. This shit has to be a cult. It has to be. A lot of people online are like, bitch, why don't you just get a job? It's the equivalent of asking somebody, like, you're in an abusive relationship. They're like, well, why don't you just leave? Because sometimes people in an abusive relationship, like, they may even be the breadwinner and the relationship is still abusive. It's not for a lack of money. Keke Palmer, Halle Bailey, they both got money. There's a lot going on there. So when people are like, well, why didn't Jane just leave? Why didn't Jane just go get a job? Why did Jane, like, keep doing this shit? The shit that she's doing is so completely insane. Some sort of emotional or psychological abuse is the only way to make sense of it. People are like, oh, she was just a gold digger. She was there for the money. To which I say, what gold? Does he have some? Sure. Is he sharing it with Jane? Absolutely not. He'd feed her some good dinner and then he'd make her take other men's dick. Like, again, what gold? Let's get back on track. The jury is shown an email sent by Diddy's accountant to Jane and her landlord about payments for Jane's rent. Jane says that hotel nights with Diddy took place in LA, New York City, Miami, and Turks and Caicos. Rico! Transportation of prostitutes. They would last between 24 to 30 hours with no sleep. Jane said they used 24 bottles of baby oil every time. 24 bottles of baby oil per freak off. I think I bought baby oil like once in my life, and I feel like that bottle is still half full somewhere. Johnson & Johnson. Remember when Oprah talked about beef being bad and then the beef people like sued Oprah? I was like, Johnson & Johnson need to come after Diddy because what he is doing to baby oil, this slander and defamation of baby oil. If I went to a dude's house and saw baby oil, I'm leaving. I'd rather see you ashy. You get some body butter like everybody else, but don't be trying to put on no baby oil. Like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like, what you got going on? It ain't gonna be going on with me, sir. I must leave now. Good day. Forever. Bye-bye. That little girl. Bye. None of this is the point. Jane said she arranged her travel to the freak-offs with KK, Diddy's chief of staff, and or his travel agent, or another one of his assistants. To which I say, Rico, 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 Rico. The assistants and others arranged the hotel nights. They booked the suites. They put up the red lights. They put on the music. They supplied the lotion, the alcohol, the bedding, the blankets, and the towels in Turks and Caicos, Miami, LA, and New York between May 2021 and October 2023. Rico! Jane says there was a routine to the hotel nights. First was prolonged foreplay, and then she performed oral sex while Diddy directed and watched, and then Jane would suggest that they move on to intercourse. She says sometimes she would repeat the pattern more than once with the same man, and then sometimes with another man. Jane said she really just wanted the guys to leave so she could, quote, be with my partner, a.k.a. Bert. Diddy trial, day 18, part 1. Today's recap is sourced from CNN, NBC News, Washington Post. NBC reports Jane cried and wiped her face with a tissue consistently throughout her testimony. When a video of Jane having sex during a hotel night was played for the jury, NBC described that Jane, quote, shuddered, averted her eyes, and broke down in tears. Jane said between May 2021 and October 2023, hotel nights with Diddy were weekly or every other week. They were on break until February 2024, and the encounters resumed, but only at Diddy's Miami home. That's not exactly true. Jane's home, too, and less frequent. Jane testified that, quote, there were only 5 sexual encounters with Diddy and an entertainer, a.k.a. an escort, between February and Diddy's arrest in September 2024. Their last encounter was August 2024. She was supposed to meet him in New York when he went to turn himself in for a final freak-off, but he got arrested a day earlier than expected. Jane says the longest hotel night was New Year's Eve 2022. She said it lasted 3 to 3.5 days. Jane said she stayed awake by taking ecstasy, caffeine, water, and protein shakes. She said the shortest hotel night was 12 hours. Jane says she does not know how many entertainers that she had sex with over the span of her relationship with Diddy. The prosecution asked Jane if she actually wanted to have sex with the men, and Jane says, no, I did it because I wanted to impress my lover. Jane said she would try to speed up the hotel nights by performing quickly. She said Diddy would slow the pace and encourage her to do more foreplay. When Jane would insist that she was tired and wanted to stop, Diddy would encourage her, quote, let's finish strong. 2021. Diddy hired an entertainer. Jane can't remember his name. Jane said she was, quote, immediately repulsed by the guy. He was sweaty. Jane said she tried to push through, but eventually she told Diddy nah. Diddy dismissed the man, and he had sex with Jane instead until entertainer Paul arrived. In late 2021, early 2022, Diddy was still choosing the entertainers. Jane figured, quote, if we're going to be doing this, I should choose who was going to be on my body. She said she and Diddy were watching porn featuring a man named Sly. Jane messaged him on Instagram. She said after some DMs and a FaceTime that she and Diddy booked him a flight from Atlanta to LA. Jane said it was her first time meeting a porn star and she was nervous. But Sly was a match, and Jane said, quote, he felt like a safe option for me. Either Jane or Diddy's travel agents scheduled Sly for hotel nights in LA, Miami, and New York. Rico! Diddy always paid. Rico! Sly received between $2,000 and $4,000 each hotel night, usually in cash. There was another adult entertainer, Chef. He worked as a private cook on the side. Jane and Chef would have sexual FaceTime calls, and she would mirror them on the TV for Diddy to watch. Jane would also ask the men to send provocative video and photos of their genitals because Diddy asked. Jane said she cried twice after hotel nights, and she cried on the stand as she recalled the details. She said the first cry was at the Waldorf Beverly Hills. Jane thought she and Diddy were going on a regular date, but he said they would have a group sex session of entertainers, plural, but it would be quick. Jane said that hotel night lasted 18 hours. She said after everybody left, Diddy told Jane he had to leave, and Jane started crying. She said, quote, I just went through all that and was feeling terrible, and then he was going to leave me alone? Jane said Diddy looked disgusted when she cried, but he didn't leave. He said he would move some things around. She also cried in Miami. Jane said she was so high on E even before sex that she was intermittently blacking out. Jane testified that she clung to Diddy's butler, quote, in desperation before Diddy made her have sex with entertainer Paul. After, Diddy and Jane were in the shower and she started crying. She said she remembered having sex with entertainer Paul, and then she remembered being in the shower. She realized she had blacked out. Diddy said, quote, don't fucking do this right now. I'm too high. She stopped crying because he told her to. After hotel nights, Diddy and Jane would go to his house. She would make sure Diddy showered, then cook for him, massage him, and put on one of his favorite shows. Then she would, quote, finally get to cuddle with him and sleep with him. She said she would feel, quote, really happy to end my night with Sean. In 2022, Diddy asked Jane to pick up drugs from his security at his LA home and then fly them to Miami when she came to meet him. Rico! She arranged the details with KK, Diddy's chief of staff. Rico! She said, I asked KK, like, is this safe? Jane testified she wasn't comfortable traveling with drugs. Nor should you be. This is a federal fucking crime, lady. Jane said KK advised, just put it in your checked luggage. Jane said she took the drugs E to Miami, and later she and Diddy took them. Jane testified she took drugs during hotel nights because she, quote, wanted to make things easier. Twice, Jane did hotel nights sober. The first time, she ended up asking Diddy for, quote, a pill, and he gave her one. Rico! She said it was just too real that this was happening. In 2023, Jane told Diddy that she no longer wanted hotel nights. She said, quote, it's dark, sleazy. It makes me feel disgusted with myself. It's the only reason you have me around and why you pay for my house. I don't want to feel obligated to perform and fear losing you. Diddy responded, girl, stop. 2023, Jane's birthday. She flew to Miami to celebrate with Diddy and was not expecting a hotel night. At dinner, Diddy brought it up. Jane said it was, quote, a gulp moment. I didn't want to do this on my birthday. After dinner, Diddy gave her a necklace, and then a new entertainer arrived. Jane asked the man to use a condom, and Diddy became upset. And she said she relented because she, quote, didn't want to sour the mood. Diddy noticed that she was unhappy, and he gave the entertainer a condom. Jane noted Diddy was visibly unhappy and seemed disinterested with the sexual encounter. When the man left, Diddy and Jane moved to another suite where Diddy had arranged cake, flowers, and balloons. They were alone and celebrating her birthday, and Jane was happy until another entertainer arrived. Jane and this entertainer had sex, quote, for hours and hours. And then he left, and Diddy said yet another entertainer was coming. 2023. The jury was shown a video of Jane asking entertainer Don to use a condom, which he agreed to. Diddy intervened to disapprove, and Jane pushes back. She says, you promised. Jane relented because she didn't want Diddy to be unhappy. He said he didn't want to see a rubber while he was watching them. Feds asked Jane why did she need Diddy's permission to have entertainer Don wear a condom. And Jane said, quote, I'm still trying to process that. Told y'all, this is the goddamn cult. It's the only thing that makes sense. You asking the man who's about to have sex with you, could you wear a condom? And that man says, sure. And then the nigga that's sitting on the side watching is going to be like, nah, I don't want you to wear a condom because I don't like the way it looks. The way it looks, the way it sexually appeals to me, the way I'm able to get my rocks off, like the visual presentation is more important than protecting my health. And then you still fuck this nigga? It's a cult. It has to be. Also, many people have pointed out, and they were like, yo, this girl is on one. People are like, this ain't no RICO. This ain't no sex trafficking. This is just like, some pimp shit. Like Diddy was on his pimp shit. Y'all do realize that, like, I know pimp shit is kind of like mainstream culture in a lot of ways. People think of pimps like the outfits and like the women and like the smoothness and the money, the cars, the Cadillac, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Y'all know that's a form of sex trafficking, right? Just because it's kind of like culturally, I wouldn't say accepted, but definitely not shunned, doesn't make it not sex trafficking and doesn't make it legal. But add this too. One of the reasons people struggle so much with the testimony, I think from Cassie, but definitely from Jane for sure. I think Jane not having as much of the physical abuse, because it's coming, as Cassie dealt with. With Jane, you're not dealing with physical abuse. There's a lot more emphasis on coercion. There's a lot more of like emotional abuse, psychological abuse, gaslighting, fraud, telling her like, oh yeah, get on the plane, come see me. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. And then when she's on the plane, like, oh yeah, by the way, we about to do that. It's your birthday. Nah, we're not going to do that. It's just you and me. Oh, by the way, I invited 3 different men. I want you to fuck. What? I think so much of again, the gaslighting, the coercion, the fraud, the love bombing. I didn't say that the first time. So much of it is common in relationships, especially if you were a heterosexual woman. It's so common when you see the more extreme version of it done to someone else. It's almost like, well, that's just kind of like what niggas do. And it's like, yeah, and a lot of that shit is illegal-ish, but also fully illegal. I keep reading the grand jury indictment under sex trafficking. Coercion is so common. Fraud is so common. Like lying to you, especially about like their marital status, their sexual health, in order to get you to have sex with them, it's fraud. When you say, no, you don't want to do this, you don't want to go there, you don't want to try this, and they keep like pressing you. Like we call it pressing you, but the technical legal name for it is coercion. Okay, fine, I'll give in. Okay, I'll do it. Just like shut the fuck up, whatever. It's consent, but it's consent under duress. It's not an enthusiastic yes. And when things are not an enthusiastic yes, it's kind of rapey. Rapey. I think we call it rapey to make it sound like something that it's not, but it's kind of rape what it is. People are like, oh, Demetria, you're being extreme. I didn't make the laws. I didn't make the laws. I don't have a law degree. I'm not in Congress. I'm not like on a city council. I'm just telling you like what the shit says in the indictment. Jane says in 2023, she showed up for a hotel night in LA. She rejected an entertainer because she was just not attracted to him. And she said Diddy was agitated, but he obliged when Jane was like, no, I can't do this. And so that guy left, and then Diddy invited another man into the room. And then also 2023, before a trip to New York, Jane told Diddy no to a freak off. And she said Diddy was defensive at first, but then he told her, like, you don't have to do them anymore. And Jane agreed to fly out. So she gets to New York and she's in an SUV and she pulls up to the Trump International Hotel. And she said she looked up at the hotel and she saw that there was a red light on in one of the hotel rooms. And she knew Diddy's assistants were in there setting up for the freak off. She said at that freak off, she said Diddy made her take E and put on an outfit before an entertainer arrived. And Jane said she didn't want to have sex with that guy, so she messaged another entertainer that she had worked with before. Jane said she booked a flight for the man to travel from Atlanta to New York City that night. Rico! And then Diddy reimbursed her for paying for it afterward. And Jane said, quote, I knew that would make Diddy happy, and I wanted to have an upbeat night with him. She also said one of Diddy's assistants left an envelope with cash to pay the man at the front desk. October 2023. Jane said she and Diddy wanted to get sober for 30 days. But first, a sobriety party in Beverly Hills for 12 to 18 hours. Jane was sober. Diddy did E and coke. After, Jane testified she threw up in the bathroom. Diddy saw her and said, "That's good. You'll feel better. Let's go. The third guy is here." That night, Jane described, quote, "I was just repulsed. I was just so mad at myself for doing that." Jane said Diddy would regularly run out of drugs during hotel night and ask his security guards, an assistant, or butler to get more. Rico! Staff would procure bottles full of ecstasy, cocaine, and a mixture of marijuana and tobacco. Diddy preferred stimulants, but a man named Guido would sometimes bring Xanax, which Jane would take to knock out after, quote, "I put Sean to sleep." That comes up again on day 20 during the cross-examination. Jane said she surprised Diddy with hotel nights on 2 occasions, likely Valentine's Day and when Diddy returned from a long trip. She said Diddy would imply that he wanted her to plan a hotel night. The feds asked her, "Why would you plan these if you didn't want to do them?" Jane said, "I loved him very deeply." NBC notes all the attorneys from both the prosecution and the defense appear riveted by Jane's testimony. We still have day 18, part 2. Got 2 more days. Diddy asked Jane to get nipple piercings. He said it would turn him on, and that's what he wanted from his girl, Jane testified. KK, Diddy's chief of staff, set up the appointment. After a year, Jane removed them because they bled and got infected. Diddy was upset. When he would see her, he'd ask, "Where are my piercings?" Or he'd say, "This is the last time I see you where you don't have piercings on." Jane also testified that she got UTIs and yeast infections, quote, almost every week. She said she took antibiotics for the pain. It would take Jane a week and a half to 2 weeks to recover from her infections, and sometimes she would not recover before the next hotel night. Jane would get sore in her vagina and pelvic area every hotel night, but she never told Diddy. Diddy told Jane he was recording just for him. He would record nearly all of the hotel nights. Jane said she was always high when Diddy recorded. And honestly, she didn't mind the recordings. It was just part of what was happening. Jane said she acted like she enjoyed the freak-offs because, quote, "I wanted to put on a good show." She testified Diddy would direct her and she would follow, quote, "on command." Jane saw Diddy give cash to at least 2 men. Rico! He kept cash in the hotel bedroom nightstand. She paid twice, but it was money that Diddy gave her. Sometimes he would run out of cash and he would call security or KK, the chief of staff, to bring more. Rico! November 2021, Jane returned home after a 2-day freak-off that she thought was going to be a weekend vacay with Diddy. She saw Diddy had posted Instagram photos of another woman in his home gym. And she texted him, quote, "This doesn't make me feel good at all. You've been saying you miss me and want to see me, but you just want the hotel shit." Diddy responded with, quote, an expletive-filled voice message that thundered through the courtroom on replay, according to Washington Post. "You are fucking nuts," Diddy bellowed. "It doesn't matter if I just finished fucking her the other day." After, Diddy FaceTimed Jane. Jane said he would say all the things I wanted to hear. He would say that it's not what I'm thinking. He would just downplay whatever I was freaking out about. And he said he loved me, and he missed me, and he wanted to see me. November 2022. Jane began writing her feelings about Diddy and the hotel nights in her notes app. Repeatedly, she wrote about how much she loathed the freak-offs and didn't want to participate. In one of the notes, she mentions that the freak-offs are at her home, and Diddy would leave her alone to clean up, and he would be in contact with other women while he was with her. She wrote in her notes, quote, "You have just crossed too many lines." December 2022, Jane wrote in the notes, "You are hurtful and damaging to me. I am done being used by you. You leave me to clean up and recover on my own." February 2023, after Jane's birthday, she saw on social media that Diddy had begun dating a new woman. He took that woman to Turks and Caicos on his private jet, which he had decorated for the woman's birthday. Jane had been wanting to go to Turks and Caicos. Jane said when she found out, she said, quote, "It made me feel absolutely terrible. I just finished spending my birthday with all these guys having sex with me, and then he would do such a romantic gesture with someone else." Note, Carisha's birthday is February 11th, and the woman that the entire internet believes to be Jane, February 8th. Diddy responded to Jane that he was tired of her constantly throwing sex in his face. He wrote, quote, "I'm done with you comparing yourself to someone else. I treat you good, and if you don't feel so, let's just be friends. I'm tired of these long texts telling me what I'm doing wrong. Jane responded, I don't throw sex in your face constantly, but these nights require everything out of me for 30 to 40 hours straight. I figure on my birthday you would switch it up on me. You're making me feel used right now, and you're breaking up with me? Diddy eventually texted her he missed her and asked to make it up to her. Jane didn't respond for 13 days. Diddy texted and called Jane, and he had his butler and assistant do so as well. Jane scheduled a trip to Paris for Fashion Week. A few hours before her flight, she said Diddy called her phone 30 times in a row. She went to Paris for 5 days, and at some point, Diddy sent her a message saying he wanted to take her to Turks and Caicos, and he missed her. Jane said, I missed him as well. She and Diddy were on again. Jane and Diddy spoke about the details of the Turks and Caicos trip. He suggested Jane come to Miami first, and they could, quote, plan a night of debauchery and fun, i.e. a hotel night, and then straight to the airport. Jane said she just wanted to be with him and to reconnect. Diddy said, okay. In Miami, they bickered about Paris. Diddy was upset that Jane went. He said, quote, his girl can't do that. 2023, the jury has shown pictures of Diddy and Jane on the beach, I think in Turks and Caicos. Shortly after arriving, Diddy got bored, and he invited an entertainer and a personal trainer to join him and Jane. That hotel night lasted 24 hours. It was just really painful, Jane testified. I was extremely sore. March 2023, Jane and Diddy made an agreement that he would pay a monthly allowance to Jane. I said $15K and he said $10K, Jane testified. I've been giving him all my love, and this was him giving me something. So as I record this, I'm currently, quote unquote, in trouble on Threads. I made a comment earlier today about Jane lowballing herself with Diddy. I was reading the testimony from day 20, and it came out that over the course of 3 years, Diddy had paid Jane a total of $150,000 that he wired to her account. And then he also had paid $10,000 a month for 2 years for her rent. So I calculated that number and I divided by 3 for the 3 years they were together. Jane was paid approximately $130,000 each year for the freak-offs, for having sex with multiple men, multiple rounds, being awake for days at a time, up to 3.5 days, all the drugs, all the UTIs, all the yeast infections, all the trauma, all the non-condomless sex, exposing herself to all manner of whatever. Who knows what she has, what she had to get rid of. But yeah, $130,000. And I just ask you to recall that one of Diddy's assistants testified. He said he was making $125,000 a year. He was working 100 hours a week for Diddy. When I posted that number, it was part of his testimony. Everybody was like, $125,000 for that? Like, you out here committing felonies for that? He paid Jane $5,000 more than he paid his, assistant. I said, and Jane says as much on day 20, so I'm not really out of pocket when I say it. Jane says at some point that Diddy had taken her on shopping sprees and he bought her a Bottega Veneta bag. She was looking online one day and she saw Diddy had taken another woman shopping and he got her a Chanel bag. Jane was really upset about the whole thing because she's like, hey, I do all this shit for you. I'm out here having marathon sex with all these different men and you're out here buying other bitches' Chanel bags? And I get Bottega Veneta after all I do? Jane says all she got out of her relationship with Diddy is trauma. The defense attorney, the man, asked Jane, he says, well, didn't you get a Bottega Veneta bag? Jane, who has been very clear, she wanted Chanel, she says, how much is my body worth? Diddy and Jane, and just for what it's worth, I do think Jane was sex trafficked. I think I said this earlier. The scenarios that Jane describes, I'm going to say how she ends up. I'm actually going to use passive voice for her. How she ends up in these freak-offs does, I believe, meet the legal definition to me and the grand jury indictment and the U.S. Attorney's Office who is suing Diddy. It does, to me, seem to meet the legal standard of sex trafficking. I think two things can be true. I think Jane was sex trafficked, yes. I also think she had a transactional relationship with Diddy. There's literally a whole contract. They're calling it a love contract, but essentially he's paying her. And when she doesn't want to do freak-offs, he holds it over her head that he's paying her rent. At some point, he buys her new veneers and he says, don't you like the roof over your head? Don't you like your pretty teeth? I said online, I feel like Jane has sold herself short. Actually, let me say what I actually said. I think I said this is the poorest pussy management I've seen in a long time. A little crass, but true. And also, Jane agrees. Jane will be the first one to tell you, like, I didn't get anything out of this relationship other than trauma. I went through all this. Other women are getting Chanel bags. I'm getting Bottega Veneta. It's definitely not a discount bag. The lawyer asked Jane, he said, how much does this bag cost? Eventually, she relents and she says, they're $1,500 to $5,000. And then the lawyer asked, they said, well, how much does a Chanel bag cost? And Jane says she doesn't know because Jane doesn't have one. People are mad at me because I said, Jane mismanaged her pussy. And did I lie? At another point, Jane is on the stand and she says that she likes men that are providers. Okay, if Jane, again, is the person that we all think Jane is, then your child's father is worth like $100 million. And then the man that you've been fucking on and doing these freak offs with is worth $400 million. How are you 3 credit cards maxed out in debt to put furniture in your house when you got a rich baby daddy and a rich boyfriend? That don't sound like mismanagement to you? I'm not even gonna say where's your millions, but I was like, you don't even have some hundreds of thousands? No, she didn't even have 10,000. You dating providers, but what are they providing? Dick? Girl, that's free. Your baby daddy got a net worth of $100 million. All you get in child support is $4,600 a month? Ma'am. And just to be very clear, I say it on other episodes, but I don't know if there are new people listening to this. I have no issue with sex work. The legality of it is something for the courts. But as far as I'm concerned, your body, your choice. And if you want to sell it, it's yours to sell. But don't sell it for cheap. And Jane literally has a contract with Diddy where they agreed on a monetary amount. So it's not like she wasn't comfortable asking him for money. She did ask. She just lowballed herself. And that's why I said it's pussy mismanagement. And also the reason she's getting $4,600 in child support is because at one point he was paying her something like $40,000 and she said that wasn't enough, took him to court and they reduced it that low. Mismanagement. She gets into a contract with Diddy. She says, I do all this shit and I want an allowance. She only asked for $15,000 out the gate. The same way I went off about Eddie and I was like, Eddie, you asking for a number that means something to you. Why don't you ask for a number that means something to him? This man is sitting up here calling you his crack pipe. He addicted to you. And all you asked him for was $15,000? Ma'am, the girls that do Dubai get flown out business class, also get a shopping spree, and they get $50,000 for a weekend of work. Ma'am, mismanagement. You should at least be getting what the girls in Dubai get. And not per month, per freak off. Run that man at minimum $50,000 a pop. He got it. I'm disappointed, as is Jane, that she wasn't making what she was worth. People were very mad at me and they were like, this is victim blaming. I'm not blaming her for shit. I mean, other than not asking for a good number. I said the same thing about Eddie. I said the same thing about all Diddy's assistants. For this man to have $400 million, I mean, and part of the reason he has it is because he's cheap as fuck and unscrupulous when it comes to paying people. The entire bad boy roster, apparently all of his assistants, and Jane. I'm sorry, I digress. Jane says she wanted to use the money for a beautiful home. And Diddy suggested to Jane that he pay the landlord directly. Girl, he had his accountant contact Jane's landlord about the rent. Diddy's not actually giving her cash. He's paying her rent. So now Jane ends up in a situation where like her rent is paid, which obviously blessing, but she has no spending change to go do whatever she wants to do. And then Jane has testified that she's all caught up with Diddy because he calls with these last minute whims. He wants her to fly out whenever. He tells her the day before, sometimes the morning of. He's trying to have a hotel night. Her nails always have to be done. Her hair always has to be done. She's always got to have an outfit going on. She says she doesn't have time to work because she's always at Diddy's whim. But he's paying her rent, which $10,000 is a great number, but she has no spending change. Jane testifies that she's in this big-ass house that Diddy is paying for, and she had to open 3 credit cards and max them out to pay for furniture to go into this big-ass house. Diddy fucked up at some point. Jane was mad at him. She was able to negotiate with him for $20,000 to pay the furniture in her house, essentially to pay off her credit card debt. So the idea that like, oh, Jane was in it for the money, she's not making enough to be in it for the money, not for the lifestyle that she's used to. When she keeps saying over and over again, like, Jane, why are you doing this? And she said, I wanted to make my partner happy. I wanted to make my partner happy. I loved him. I wanted to make my partner happy. I thought he was sharing some sort of sacred part of himself. He was being vulnerable with me. So I wanted to respect that and make him happy, even though it didn't make me happy. I wanted to fulfill my duties as a girlfriend. That's why I was like, yo, it's a fucking cult because she ain't doing it for the money. It ain't the money. It might be low self-esteem. which I think it is. She says as much as she has low self-esteem at some point. It might. It clearly is some sort of psychological abuse. It clearly is some sort of emotional manipulation. There's gaslighting, there's love bombing, but there's something else, a layer on top of it that is making Jane and Cassie and the assistant that he sexually assaulted and the stylist and all the assistants still keep going back to him, still wanting to be around him despite all the crazy shit that he does. It ain't normal. The psychologists need to come and help me out because it's beyond my understanding. The veneers are the next part. Diddy also paid for Jane to get veneers. He told her, quote, he didn't like her teeth. She said KK made the appointment to get them. From April 2023 to August 2023, Jane and Diddy saw each other frequently, always for freak-offs. In August 2023, Diddy texted Jane. He said, quote, are we getting freaky tonight? It's not clear how Jane responded. Remember the guy testified he had to go pull the deleted messages off the phone? Everything didn't come through. Whatever Jane said, Diddy responded to her. He said, quote, well, get over it, please. Look at the roof over your head and your pretty teeth. Jane testified Diddy was paying her rent by then. And also, he still is. On today, this came up on June 6th in the year of our Lord 2025. On June 10th, on June 11th, or you might hear it on the 12th. Whatever day you hear it, if it's in June, then Diddy is still paying Jane's rent. He's paying for her lawyer and he's paying her rent. Jane noted, this is what I was just mentioning, that the allowance that Diddy gave her was not enough to furnish her home. She said she opened 3 credit cards to buy furniture. Jane asked Diddy for help covering the furniture, and he wired her $20,000. Jane said she turned down, quote, an all-star hotel night, which involved multiple entertainers and lasted much longer. She told Diddy she was on her cycle, she wasn't feeling well. Diddy cursed her out and told her, quote, don't stress me about money ever again. Jane texted back that she'd been doing freak-offs for 2.5 years and she was not a sex robot. Diddy didn't respond for 3 weeks. And when he did, he sent an audio message warning Jane that, quote, she was going to have a rude awakening if she did not participate in the freak-offs. I'm like, is that a threat? Because if it's a threat, that's kind of Rico. Kind of Rico-ish. Or full-on Rico. Diddy said, quote, I'm not going to be playing these games with you at all. He added, you need to get on your job. Didn't he say the same thing to Cassie? Cassie said the freak-offs felt like a job because she didn't have time to do nothing else. 2024, Diddy told Jane he didn't know that she never wanted to do freak-offs. Jane said she believed him at first, but then she looked at her text, which I was like, girl, I don't even have access to your phone. I just know the stuff that's been read in court. You told the man 50 million times you didn't want to do this shit. Jane said she looked at her text and then realized she'd been saying the same thing over and over and over again since 2021. Wait, she forgot she told him she didn't want to do the freak-offs all those times? Okay, girl. All right, at this point, we're caught up through day 18 of the trial. I'm going to wrap this episode. I was trying not to do a part 3, but there's so much, and then the case is moving so fast. Stay tuned. It's on the way. Most of it's already recorded. I just need to put in the testimony from yesterday, which luckily wasn't a long day in court. Then we should be caught up completely. All right, talk soon. Thank you for listening. As always, bye.